My name is Jessica Harper, and I'm 31 years old. 6 years ago, my father called me 4 days before Christmas and said 8 words that destroyed everything I thought I knew about family. Don't come home this year. Brandon doesn't want complications. No discussion, no warmth, just a wall built between me and 26 years of desperately trying to fit in. I spent that Christmas alone, in a diner in Seattle, watching cheerful families exchange gifts while I choked down lukewarm mashed potatoes. I had no idea that the couple sitting in the booth behind me would become the family I'd always needed. I had no idea that 6 years later, they'd walk me down the aisle at my wedding as my legal parents, while my biological family stood outside the venue, realizing they'd lost their daughter forever. Before I continue, let me take you back to the phone call that changed my life. I remember every detail of where I was when my phone rang. December 20th, 4 days before Christmas. I was in my one-bedroom apartment in Seattle, wrapping presents I'd already bought for my family back in Oregon. I'd spent weeks choosing the perfect gifts: a cashmere scarf for Mom, a book on woodworking for Dad, building blocks for Brandon's twin boys. My plane ticket was already printed and tucked in my purse. Non-refundable, naturally. Dad's name lit up my screen. I answered with a smile. "Hey, Dad, I was just thinking about you." "Jessica." His voice was strained, uncomfortable. "I need to talk to you about something." My stomach sank. That tone never brought good news. "What's wrong? Is Mom okay?" "Your mother's fine." A long pause. "Look, I've been thinking. It might be better if you didn't come home for Christmas this year." I actually laughed, certain he was joking. "What?" "Dad, I already bought my ticket. I have everyone's presents wrapped." Brandon doesn't want complications. His voice turned harder. The twins are at a difficult age, and he doesn't need the stress right now. I gripped the phone tighter. Complications? What complications? I haven't even seen Brandon in over a year. Exactly. And that's how he wants to keep it? You know how sensitive he is. How sensitive he is. My voice cracked. "Dad, I literally just asked him last Christmas why he didn't invite me to the twins' birthday party. That's not causing problems. That's asking a question." "See? There it is." His voice held barely concealed frustration. "You always have to make waves. Brandon has enough on his plate without you stirring things up." I stood there frozen, staring at the wrapped presents on my coffee table. 26 years old, and my father was telling me I wasn't welcome at Christmas because I'd once dared to ask why I was excluded. "Dad, I already bought presents. I already took time off work." "Then return the ticket." His tone left no room for argument. "Brandon is going through a hard time financially. He doesn't need his sister making him feel guilty about things." The line went dead before I could respond. I understood perfectly. I'd always understood. I was the one who could be sacrificed. I wish I could say this was the first time. But as I sat surrounded by useless Christmas presents, the memories came flooding back like a terrible movie I couldn't stop watching. My high school graduation. I'd worked so hard to be valedictorian, studying late into the night, maintaining a perfect GPA. When they called my name to give the commencement speech, I looked out into the audience for my parents. Their seats were empty. They'd left early because Brandon had a soccer tournament that afternoon. Same day, 2 hours away. "Your brother's future scholarship depends on this game, Jessica. Surely you understand that your speech isn't as important." I never gave another graduation speech. Then there was the summer I got accepted to my dream college with a partial scholarship. I was so proud, so excited to tell them. I burst through the front door waving the acceptance letter. Mom was in the kitchen. Dad was in the living room. Brandon was on the couch looking miserable. "Not now, Jessica." Mom barely glanced at me. "Your brother just got dumped and he's devastated. We need to focus on him right now." My college acceptance sat on the counter for 3 days before anyone asked about it. And when they did, it was only to tell me they couldn't help with tuition because Brandon needed a new car for his commute. You understand, don't you? Your brother needs reliable transportation. You're smart. You'll figure out the money. I figured it out. I worked 2 jobs through college, took out loans, lived on ramen and hope, and through it all, I learned that complaining only made everything worse. Don't be so dramatic. Stop being jealous of your brother. Why can't you just be supportive? Family means sacrifice. So I stopped complaining. I made myself smaller, quieter, more convenient. I thought if I took up less space, needed less attention, asked for less love, maybe then I'd finally be enough. I was 26 years old, sitting in a cold apartment with presents no one wanted from me, and I finally understood the truth. There was no amount of small that would ever be enough. I called my mother. Some desperate part of me still believed she might defend me, might choose me, just this once. The phone rang twice before she picked up. Hello? Mom, did Dad talk to you? About Christmas? A long pause. I could hear the television in the background. Some Christmas movie playing. Yes, he mentioned it. And you agree with him? You think I shouldn't come home for Christmas? Another pause. Longer this time. Jessica, you have to understand. Your brother is going through a lot right now. The divorce from his first wife really affected him, and raising twins is exhausting. He specifically asked us not to invite you. He asked you not to invite me. I repeated the words, trying to make them make sense. To my own family's Christmas. He asked you to exclude me, and you just agreed? Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Mom's voice held a familiar edge. You know how Brandon gets when he's upset. It's just easier for everyone if you sit this one out. Easier for everyone except me. Don't be selfish, Jessica. Not everything is about you. Your brother needs us right now. Surely you can understand that. I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, and felt something inside me go completely quiet. Not sad, not angry, just empty. 5 seconds passed. 10. 15. I think it's best if you listen to your father this year, sweetheart. The word sweetheart felt like a knife. Okay, Mom. Jessica, don't be like this. Just understand that. I said, okay, Mom. I hung up. She didn't call back. Neither did Dad. Neither did Brandon. I sat in my apartment as the winter darkness settled in, watching the Christmas lights twinkle on my neighbor's balcony. My father had a chance to choose me. My mother had a chance to say one word in my defense, and they chose Brandon's comfort over my existence. But as the darkness deepened, something else grew inside me, a quiet resignation. If I wasn't welcome at their table, I would create my own Christmas. Christmas Eve arrived cold and gray. I woke up in my apartment to the sound of children laughing in the hallway. A family was visiting someone on my floor, their voices full of joy and warmth. The smell of cinnamon and sugar drifted through the vents. I made instant coffee and sat by the window, watching people hurry through the streets below with shopping bags and wrapped presents. My phone stayed silent all morning. No calls, no texts, not even a Merry Christmas message from anyone in my family. Around 11, I made the mistake of checking Facebook. Brandon had posted a photo. The whole family around the Christmas tree. Mom, Dad, Brandon, his new girlfriend Kelly, the twin boys in matching reindeer sweaters. Everyone was smiling, holding mugs of hot chocolate. The caption read, "Grateful for the people who matter. This is what family looks like." I zoomed in on the photo, counted the stockings hanging on the mantel. 5 stockings, one for each person in the picture. There wasn't even an empty stocking where mine used to hang. They hadn't just excluded me. They'd erased me entirely, like I'd never been part of this family at all. I closed the app, stared at the ceiling. I thought about ordering Chinese food and spending the day in bed. That's what I deserved, right? A pathetic meal alone in my dark apartment, feeling sorry for myself while my family celebrated without me. That's what the difficult daughter gets. But something in me refused to surrender. No, I wasn't going to sit here and let them win. I wasn't going to let their rejection turn me into the dramatic, needy person they'd always accused me of being. I grabbed my coat. If I was going to eat Christmas dinner alone, I was going to do it somewhere warm, somewhere with lights and life and other people. I just needed to find a restaurant that was open. Harbor House Restaurant was one of those classic Seattle establishments. Exposed brick walls, soft lighting, the kind of place that still used real candles on every table. More importantly, it was one of the few restaurants in the city open on Christmas Eve. When I walked through the door, warmth enveloped me immediately. The smell of roasted ham and fresh bread, the gentle murmur of conversation, and everywhere, families. Parents with adult children, grandparents holding babies, groups of friends who laughed like they'd known each other since childhood. The restaurant hummed with the sound of people who belonged somewhere. The hostess looked at me with thinly veiled pity. Just one tonight? Just one. The words tasted bitter. She led me to a tiny table in the corner, wedged between the kitchen and a large group that spanned 3 tables. I could have reached out and touched their chairs. I sat down, opened the menu, pretended this was intentional. The group next to me was clearly celebrating. An older couple sat at the head of the table, probably in their mid-60s, a middle-aged couple with them, and a younger man around my age who kept telling stories that made everyone laugh. 3 generations sharing a meal. They passed dishes without asking. They interrupted each other in that comfortable way that only people who truly love each other can. They teased and joked and belonged. I watched them from the corner of my eye and felt something crack open in my chest. This is what family is supposed to feel like. The server arrived with water and a sympathetic smile. "What can I get you?" "The Christmas special, please." I was going to survive this dinner. I was going to be fine. I wasn't fine. My ham arrived perfectly blazed, cranberry sauce glistening, roasted vegetables arranged beautifully. It looked like something from a magazine. I couldn't taste any of it. I sat there pushing food around my plate, trying not to watch the family beside me, trying not to think about my own family gathered in Oregon, opening presents and laughing without a single thought about the daughter they discarded. And suddenly, with painful clarity, I understood something I'd been avoiding for 26 years. This wasn't about Christmas. This wasn't about Brandon's stress or his needs or his sensitivity. This was about a pattern so deep and so old it had shaped my entire existence. I had spent 26 years trying to earn a place at their table, bending myself into smaller and smaller shapes, swallowing my hurt, apologizing for having needs, staying quiet when I should have spoken, speaking up only to be told I was causing problems. And what had it gotten me? A corner table, a meal alone, a Facebook photo with no space for me. If I kept going like this, if I kept making myself smaller and quieter and more invisible, what would I have left? At some point, there would be nothing left to shrink. The tears came before I could stop them. I turned toward the window, hoping no one would notice. I grabbed my napkin and pressed it against my eyes, trying to disappear like I always did. "Sweetheart?" I froze. A woman's voice, gentle and concerned. "Are you okay?" I looked up. The older woman from the family next to me was standing beside my table. Gray hair pulled back in an elegant bun, warm brown eyes, a face that looked like it had spent a lifetime listening to people's stories. She was looking at me like I was someone who mattered. "I'm fine," I said automatically. "Just allergies." The woman raised one eyebrow, not mocking, just knowing. "Allergies don't usually make people cry on Christmas Eve, honey." I let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. That obvious? Only to someone who's paying attention. Her voice was kind but steady. "I'm Patricia. Patricia Miller. Jessica." My voice cracked. "Jessica Harper." "Well, Jessica Harper." She glanced back at her family, then at me. "Nobody should eat alone on Christmas Eve. Why don't you join us?" I shook my head immediately. "Oh no, I couldn't possibly. I don't want to intrude on your family." "You're not intruding." Patricia smiled. "I'm inviting you. There's a difference. I really appreciate it, but my husband tells terrible jokes, she continued as if I hadn't spoken, and my son David keeps trying to debate politics with everyone. You might as well come suffer through it with us. From the big table, the older man waved at me. She's right. I do tell terrible jokes, and you should know, she's never lost an argument in 40 years of marriage. You might as well give in now. The younger man, David apparently, grinned. He's not exaggerating about the jokes. They're genuinely awful. I looked at my cold ham, my empty table, my napkins still damp with tears. Then I looked at Patricia Miller with her kind eyes and her family that somehow had room for a stranger. Okay, I heard myself say. If you're really sure it's okay? I'm sure. Patricia put her hand on my shoulder. Come on. We just ordered dessert, and there's way too much pie. I stood on shaky legs and followed her to the table, not knowing that this single moment, this small act of kindness from a woman I'd just met, was about to change the entire course of my life. They made space for me like I'd always been there. Someone pulled up a chair. Someone else handed me a clean plate. Before I could even sit down properly, I had a glass of wine in my hand and warm bread on my plate. I'm William, the older man said, shaking my hand with a firm grip. This is my wife, Patricia, our daughter, Michelle, and her husband, Tom, and our son, David. And you're Jessica, right? Yes. I gave an awkward little wave to the table. Thank you so much for letting me join you. This is incredibly kind. What do you do, Jessica? Michelle asked, passing me the mashed potatoes. I'm a web developer. I work remotely mostly. That's wonderful, Tom said. I can barely figure out how to attach a file to an email. Dad, that's not hard, the teenage girl next to him said. Even I can do that. Thanks for the vote of confidence, kiddo, Tom laughed. Everyone chuckled. Not at anyone, just with each other. It was such a foreign sound to me. David caught my eye from across the table. He was probably around 30, with dark hair and an easy smile. Fair warning, my dad's about to tell his annual terrible Christmas joke. I am not, William protested, but he was already grinning. Fine, what do you call an obnoxious reindeer? Dad, no, Michelle groaned. Rudolph. The teenagers burst into giggles. Patricia shook her head. David looked at me and mouthed, I warned you. And I laughed. Actually laughed. A real laugh for the first time all day. William raised his wine glass. A toast. To unexpected guests who make our Christmas complete. Everyone raised their glasses, including me. I looked around at these people, strangers all of them, until 20 minutes ago, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Warmth. Acceptance. The feeling of being wanted. I didn't know families could feel like this. After the main course, while the teenagers disappeared to play games on their phones and the men argued about football, Patricia moved to the chair next to mine. How are you really doing? She asked quietly. I looked down at my plate. Better. This is really nice. Thank you so much for including me. You're welcome. She took a sip of her coffee. But that's not what I asked you. Something about her directness made me want to tell the truth. I'm okay. Just having a hard Christmas, that's all. Do you want to tell me why you're really here alone? I hesitated. The truth felt too humiliating to say out loud. My own father told me not to come home. My brother thinks I'm a complication. My mother chose his comfort over having her daughter at Christmas. But Patricia waited, patient, no judgment in her eyes. My dad called me 4 days ago, I finally said. Told me not to come home for Christmas. My brother didn't want complications. That's what he called me. A complication. Complications? Patricia's voice was gentle, but I could hear the steel underneath. What kind of complications? The kind where I ask questions they don't want to answer. The kind where I exist and it makes my brother uncomfortable. I felt the tears threatening again. It's fine. I mean, it's not fine, but it's not. It's not fine. Patricia's voice was firm. Can I tell you something I learned in 32 years as a family therapist? I blinked. You're a therapist? Retired now, she smiled. But I spent 3 decades helping families work through dysfunction. And I learned that the people who accuse you of being difficult or causing complications are usually creating the problems themselves. They just need someone to blame. The words hit me like a physical blow. You're not the problem, Jessica. Patricia put her hand over mine. You never were. I couldn't speak. I could barely breathe. These were the words I'd needed to hear my entire life. Have you ever been made the scapegoat in your family? Have you ever been blamed for causing problems just because you asked to be treated fairly? Have you ever been told you're too sensitive, too demanding, too much, when really you're just asking for basic respect? If this resonates with you, you're not alone. What happened next changed everything. The evening wound down slowly, the way good meals do. Dessert was served. More coffee appeared. The teenagers eventually came back to the table, tired but happy. When the check came, I reached for my wallet, but William waved me off. Absolutely not, he said. This one's on us. I can't let you pay for my meal. You can, and you will. He smiled warmly. Consider it a Christmas tradition. We always treat new friends. As we gathered our coats and prepared to leave, Patricia pressed something into my hand, a small business card, cream-colored with elegant black lettering. I looked down. Patricia Miller, Ph.D., family psychology, retired. Below that, a phone number and an address in a Seattle suburb. If you ever need to talk, she said, call me. I mean that. Thank you. I clutched the card like a lifeline. William appeared beside us, putting on his coat. Sunday brunches at our place every week. You're welcome anytime you want to come. I shook my head. That's incredibly generous, but I couldn't possibly impose like that. You're not imposing if we're inviting you, David said, joining us. Mom never says things she doesn't mean. Trust me on this. Patricia squeezed my hand. Family isn't always blood, Jessica. Sometimes it's about showing up. I stood there in the restaurant lobby, holding a business card from a woman I'd met 4 hours ago, receiving an open invitation from a family I had no claim to. Outside, snow had started to fall, soft and white and perfect. Through the window, I could see families hurrying to their cars, children bundled in scarves, parents carrying leftovers. I looked back at the Millers, William helping Patricia with her coat, Michelle organizing her teenagers, David waiting by the door with an expectant look. Okay, I said. Maybe I'll stop by sometime. Patricia smiled like she'd known I would say yes all along. We'll be expecting you. I had no idea I'd just met my real family. I didn't go to Sunday brunch the next week, or the week after that. It felt too strange, too presumptuous, too much like I was forcing myself into someone else's family. But Patricia called. Just checking in, she said. Just wanted to see how you were doing after the holidays. By mid-January, I finally accepted the invitation. That first Sunday, I stood on the Miller's porch for a full 5 minutes before I worked up the courage to knock. The house was beautiful. A craftsman-style home with a wide porch and flower boxes in the windows. It looked like the kind of place where happy memories were made. Patricia opened the door before I could change my mind and bolt. There you are. She pulled me into a hug like it was the most natural thing in the world. We saved you a seat. Come in, come in. That was the first of many Sundays. Over the next 6 months, I became a regular at the Miller family table. William taught me to play chess, though I never won a single game. Patricia showed me her secret recipe for blueberry scones, the one she swore she'd never written down, but somehow remembered perfectly every time. Michelle's teenagers started calling me Aunt Jess without anyone telling them to. And David and I became friends, real friends, the kind who texted random thoughts at midnight and argued about movies and sat next to each other at dinner without anyone having to arrange the seating. I didn't hear from my biological family once. Not a call, not a text, not even a birthday card when I turned 27. For the first time in my life, I stopped noticing their absence, because for the first time, I wasn't performing for love. I wasn't shrinking myself to fit into someone else's expectations. I was just loved, simply for existing. It felt like finally coming home. One spring afternoon, about 10 months after that first Christmas Eve, Patricia and I were sitting on her back porch. The garden was just starting to bloom, tulips pushing through the soil, cherry blossoms drifting like pink snow. William and David were inside watching a baseball game. We could hear them shouting at the TV. "Have you heard from your family?" Patricia asked. I watched a hummingbird hover near the feeder. "No, and I haven't reached out either." She nodded, no judgment in her eyes. "Do you want to?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. Sometimes, I admitted. Late at night, mostly. I'll think about calling my mom and trying to explain. But then I remember there's nothing to explain. She knows what she did. She just doesn't think it was wrong. That's a hard thing to accept. It is. I pulled my cardigan tighter around me. I keep waiting to feel guilty about it. Everyone says you should forgive your family no matter what. Blood is thicker than water and all that. You know what the full saying is? Patricia took a sip of her tea. The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. It means the bonds we choose are stronger than the ones we're born into. I turned to look at her. I never knew that. She smiled, soft and knowing. Most people don't, but it's true. The relationships we build, the people we choose to let into our lives, those bonds can be just as strong as any biological tie. Sometimes stronger. I didn't fully understand what she was hinting at. Not yet. "Just something to think about," Patricia said. She patted my hand and changed the subject to her vegetable garden. But her words stayed with me, taking root slowly, waiting to bloom at exactly the right time. It happened so gradually, I almost didn't notice it happening. 3 years after that first Christmas Eve, David and I weren't just friends anymore. We were something more. Something that had grown so slowly and naturally that when we finally acknowledged it, it felt less like a beginning and more like a recognition of what had always been there. He took me to dinner at Harbor House Restaurant, the same place where we'd met. "This feels like coming full circle," I said, sliding into a booth. "That's the idea." David was nervous. I could tell by the way he kept adjusting his napkin. I wanted to bring us back to where it all started. He reached across the table and took my hand. "Jessica, I've been trying to figure out how to say this for months." He took a deep breath. "I want to spend the rest of my life choosing you. Every single day." My heart stopped. "David, I know your family hurt you. I know you're scared that people who are supposed to love you will let you down." His eyes were steady on mine. "But I'm not going anywhere. I never have been, and I never will." He pulled out a small velvet box. "Jessica Harper, will you marry me?" I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. I looked at this man who'd been my friend first, my support system second, my safe place always, and I saw my future. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes." He slipped the ring on my finger, and the restaurant erupted in applause. I'd been so focused on David, I hadn't even noticed the other diners watching. And then I saw them, in the corner booth. William and Patricia, champagne already poured, beaming at us like proud parents. Mom couldn't resist. David laughed, pulling me close. "She's been planning this for weeks." I was going to officially become a Miller. The wedding planning began immediately. Venues, caterers, flowers, music. It was overwhelming and exciting and everything I'd never let myself imagine. But one question kept me awake at night. The wedding invitations would need a line that said, "Parents of the bride." And I had no idea what to write there. Michael and Susan Harper. They hadn't spoken to me in over 3 years. Hadn't called when I got promoted at work. Hadn't acknowledged my existence in any meaningful way. I couldn't put their names on my wedding invitation. They hadn't earned that honor. I was pacing in the Miller's living room one evening, worrying about this problem out loud, when Patricia found me. "What's troubling you, sweetheart?" I told her about the invitation, about the impossible line I couldn't figure out how to fill. Patricia sat down on the couch and patted the cushion next to her. There's something I mentioned once, a long time ago, about the bonds we choose being as strong as the bonds we're born into. Do you remember? I nodded slowly. You said the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. Adult adoption, Patricia said gently. It's a legal process where a consenting adult is formally adopted by another family. It creates a legal parent-child relationship. New birth certificate, new legal next of kin, everything. My heart started pounding. That's actually possible? Very possible. I've helped several clients through the process over the years. I looked at this woman who'd invited me to her table on the loneliest night of my life, who'd fed me Sunday brunches and taught me about scones and shown me what a mother could be. Patricia, I said, my voice breaking, would you and William consider? She pulled me into her arms before I could finish the sentence. We've considered you our daughter since that first Christmas, she whispered. We were just waiting for you to be ready. The adoption process took several months. Paperwork, court appearances, legal filings, but with Patricia guiding me through every step, it felt less like bureaucracy and more like a sacred ritual. When the judge signed the final order, I legally became Jessica Miller. I had a new birth certificate, new legal parents, a new family on paper and in my heart. The wedding was set for the following September. We sent out invitations with the line I'd agonized over, now proudly printed. Parents of the bride, William and Patricia Miller. I should have known the Harper family would eventually find out. 4 months before the wedding, my phone buzzed with a text from Brandon, the first message I'd received from him in over 3 years. Heard you're getting married. Congrats, I guess. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I blocked the number. A week later, my mother called. I let it go to voicemail. Then another call. And another. Finally, a text. Why didn't you tell us you were engaged? We're your family. Call me back. I read it twice. Deleted it. 3 years of silence. 3 years of treating me like I didn't exist. And now suddenly they remembered they had a daughter. I wasn't angry. I'd moved past anger a long time ago. I was just tired. David found me staring at my phone that evening. Everything okay? My biological family found out about the wedding. Ah. He sat down beside me. What do you want to do? Nothing. I put the phone away. I don't owe them anything. Not an explanation, not an invitation, nothing. He nodded and pulled me close. Whatever you decide, but we both knew this wasn't over. The Harpers weren't the kind of family who accepted being ignored quietly. The question was, what would they do about it? She showed up at my workplace on a Wednesday afternoon. I was in a meeting, reviewing code with my team, when the receptionist knocked on the conference room door. Jessica, there's someone here to see you. She says she's your mother. My stomach dropped. I excused myself from the meeting and walked to the lobby, where my mother stood, looking out of place and uncomfortable. Susan Harper looked older than I remembered, more gray in her hair, deeper lines around her eyes. But her expression was the same disappointed look I'd spent my childhood trying to erase. Mom, the word felt strange in my mouth. What are you doing here? What am I doing here? She stepped toward me. What are you doing, Jessica? Getting married and not even telling your own mother? We haven't spoken in 3 years. And whose fault is that? You're the one who cut us off. I took a deep breath, counted to 5. That's not what happened, and you know it. Susan's eyes swept across the lobby, then focused back on me. I want an invitation to the wedding. No. Her jaw dropped. Excuse me? You heard me. I kept my voice calm and steady. You don't get to erase me for 3 years and then demand a seat at my wedding. I'm still your mother. That hasn't changed. Actually, it has. Legally and every other way that matters. I met her gaze evenly. I was adopted. I'm a Miller now. The color drained from her face. You what? You heard me. I felt strangely calm. Patricia and William Miller legally adopted me 2 years ago. They're my parents now. You and Dad chose not to be. You can't just replace us. Her voice shook. I didn't replace you. I found people who actually wanted me. There's a difference. I walked toward the door and held it open. Jessica, wait. She looked panicked now. Your father would want to see you. Brandon would want you there. Brandon is the reason you excluded me in the first place. And Dad never stood up for me once. Not once in 26 years. I shook my head. It's too late. You made your choice. I've made mine. Please, goodbye. I held the door steady. She left finally, her shoulders hunched. I watched her walk to her car through the window, then went back to my meeting. The wedding day dawned perfect and clear. September in the Seattle area, warm sun and blue sky, trees just starting to turn gold and red. We'd chosen an outdoor venue, a garden estate with rolling lawns, and a beautiful gazebo covered in white roses. In the bridal suite, I stood before a full-length mirror while Patricia adjusted my veil. You look absolutely beautiful, she said softly. I looked at my reflection. The woman looking back at me was confident, radiant, nothing like the broken girl who'd sat alone in a restaurant 6 years ago. That girl hadn't believed she deserved to be loved. This woman knew better. On the vanity beside me sat a copy of the wedding program. I picked it up, reading the line I never thought I'd be able to write. Parents of the bride, William and Patricia Miller. Underneath, in smaller text, the family who chose her. Patricia noticed me looking. Are you nervous about the ceremony? No. I set down the program. Not at all. Just grateful. She put her hands on my shoulders. Whatever happens today, you have a family who chose you deliberately and completely. We will always choose you. I hugged her tight. I love you, Mom. It was the first time I'd said it out loud. The word came naturally, like it had always been waiting for the right person. I love you too, sweetheart. Patricia's eyes filled with tears. Through the window, I could see guests arriving. David was already waiting at the gazebo, looking nervous and handsome in his gray suit. It was time. Whatever came next, I was ready. The ceremony was everything I'd dreamed of. David waiting at the end of the aisle, with tears in his eyes. William walking me toward him, steady and proud, exactly like a father should be. The vows we'd written ourselves, words that made half the guests cry, and the other half pretend they had allergies. When David slipped the ring on my finger, and the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, I felt the final piece of my life click into place. I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The reception was in full swing, guests mingling and laughing, when the security guard approached me. Mrs. Miller, he said discreetly, there are 3 people at the entrance. They claim to be your family. I'd expected this. Part of me had been waiting for it all day. David appeared at my side immediately. What's going on? My biological family is here. His jaw tightened. I'll handle it. No, I took his hand. This is my moment. I'll handle it. I considered my options. I could have them removed immediately. I could pretend they weren't there. I could avoid the confrontation entirely. But something in me said, no. Let them see. Let them see what they lost. Let them see the family who stepped up when they stepped away. Let them witness the life I'd built without them. Let them understand exactly what their choices cost them. Let them in, I told the security guard. But don't seat them anywhere. They can stand in the back. Are you sure? David asked. I'm sure. The guard nodded and left. A few minutes later, I saw them, Susan and Michael Harper, and Brandon with his new wife, standing uncertainly at the edge of the reception, looking around at the 200 people celebrating their daughter's wedding. Their daughter, who they hadn't spoken to in over 3 years. The MC was about to make an announcement. Perfect timing. If you were in my shoes, would you have let your biological family into your wedding? What would you have done? Would you have turned them away completely or let them see what they'd lost? The MC stepped up to the microphone and the music softened. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please. The room quieted. Guests turned toward the front. Champagne glasses paused mid-air. Before we continue the celebration, I'd like to introduce some very special people. I watched my biological family from across the room. Susan was craning her neck, trying to see. Michael stood behind her, hands in his pockets, looking like he wanted to disappear. Brandon and his wife hung back slightly, whispering to each other. They had no idea what was coming. Please join me in welcoming the parents of the bride. Susan straightened up. I could see her preparing to acknowledge the introduction, to accept the recognition she believed was rightfully hers. William and Patricia Miller. The room erupted in applause and cheers. William and Patricia stood from the head table, beaming, waving to the guests. People whistled. The photographer captured the moment, and across the room, my mother's face went white. I watched it happen in slow motion. The confusion, the disbelief, the moment she realized what those words meant. William and Patricia Miller, the family who chose Jessica and whom Jessica chose in return. Susan grabbed Michael's arm. What did he just say? Michael looked stunned, speechless. Around them, guests clapped and smiled, completely unaware that the older couple in the back had any connection to the bride at all. To everyone at this wedding, William and Patricia Miller were simply what they appeared to be, my parents. Susan's mouth opened and closed. No words came out. She looked at the couple accepting congratulations, then at me, standing with my husband, and the truth settled over her like ice water. She had been replaced, completely, officially, legally, and everyone in this room knew it, except her. Susan pushed through the crowd before anyone could stop her. She reached me just as the applause was dying down. Her face was flushed, her eyes wild. Michael and Brandon trailed behind her, both looking like they wanted to disappear. What is going on? Susan's voice was a harsh whisper. Who are those people? I kept my voice calm, steady. My legal parents. I was adopted 4 years ago. You what? She actually staggered backward. You can't just replace us. I didn't replace you. I looked at her evenly. You abandoned me first. We never abandoned you. You told me not to come home for Christmas. You chose Brandon's comfort over my existence. For my entire life, every single time. The guests nearest to us had noticed the confrontation now. Conversations died. Heads turned. That's not fair. Susan's voice cracked. Fair? I kept my voice low, but every word was clear. You want to talk about fair? I spent 26 years trying to earn a place in your family. You know what I got? An Instagram photo with no room for me. A Christmas dinner alone. 3 years of complete silence. I'm still your mother. Susan's voice broke. Not legally. I held up my left hand, wedding rings gleaming. Not emotionally. Around us. The room had gone completely quiet. 200 pairs of eyes watched this confrontation unfold. Susan looked around, suddenly aware of her audience. Her cheeks burned red. This is humiliating. Then leave. My voice was soft, but final. You showed up uninvited to my wedding. You don't get to be the victim here. She stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. Maybe she was. The daughter who never fought back had finally learned to stand her ground. And then my father spoke. The first time he'd spoken directly to me in over 3 years. Jessica. His voice was rough, broken. I'm so sorry. I turned to look at him. Really look at him. Michael Harper had aged more than 3 years should account for. More gray hair, deeper wrinkles, shoulders slumped forward. But his eyes were wet with tears I'd never seen before. I'm sorry, he said again. I should have done better. I should have stood up for you. Something cracked inside my chest. Not healing, just recognition of an old wound. I know, Dad. I was a coward. His voice trembled. I knew how your mother treated you. I knew how Brandon always came first. And I just stood there. I let it happen. Susan grabbed his arm. Michael, what are you? He shook her off gently, kept his eyes on me. You were my little girl, my daughter, and I let them make you feel like you didn't matter. A tear rolled down his cheek. I'm so sorry, Jessica. The words I'd waited almost 3 decades to hear. And they came too late. I know you're sorry, Dad. My voice was gentle but firm. But sorry doesn't undo the years you stood by and watched. Sorry doesn't give me back my childhood. Sorry doesn't make any of this okay. I know. He nodded, wiping his eyes. I know it doesn't. I just needed you to know. Patricia appeared at my shoulder then. She didn't say anything, just placed her hand on my arm. A quiet reminder that I wasn't alone. Never again. Susan stared at Patricia with barely concealed hostility. You're the one who stole my daughter. Patricia's expression didn't change. I didn't steal anything, Mrs. Harper. Then what do you call this? William stepped forward, positioning himself beside his wife. William Miller wasn't a confrontational man. In all the years I'd known him, I'd never heard him raise his voice once. But when he spoke now, there was steel underneath his gentle tone. I think it's time for you folks to leave. Susan's jaw dropped. Who are you to tell us what to do? I'm her father. William's voice carried across the quiet reception. Legally and in every way that matters. You stole our daughter. William shook his head, calm and certain. No, ma'am. We didn't steal anything. You threw her away. We just had the good sense to pick her up. Susan flinched like she'd been slapped. 6 years ago, William continued, this young woman was sitting alone in a restaurant on Christmas Eve because her own family told her she wasn't welcome. My wife invited her to our table. We fed her. We talked to her. We treated her like a human being. He stepped closer to Susan, his voice dropping, but losing none of its intensity. Do you know what she told us that night? She said she couldn't remember the last time she felt like she mattered to someone. 26 years old, and she couldn't remember ever feeling wanted by her own family. Susan opened her mouth. No sound came out. We didn't steal your daughter, Mrs. Harper. We just showed her what family is supposed to look like. The rest was her choice. He turned to face the gathered crowd. Now this is my daughter's wedding day, the happiest day of her life, and I will not let anyone ruin it for her. He nodded to the security guards who had been standing discreetly nearby. Please escort these people out. As the guards approached, William put his arm around me. Jessica is a Miller now, and Millers protect their own. This is what a father sounds like. Before the security guards could lead them away, I held up my hand. Wait. Everyone froze. Susan looked at me with something like hope flickering in her eyes. Maybe she thought I was having second thoughts. Maybe she thought I would relent, forgive, let them back in. I walked toward my biological family, stopped just out of reach. Mom, Dad, Brandon. The words felt strange on my tongue when directed at them. I need you to understand something. Susan's chin lifted slightly. What? I don't hate you. Whatever she'd expected me to say, that clearly wasn't it. I don't hate you, I repeated. I've made peace with who you are and who you couldn't be for me. Michael's tears flowed freely now. Susan's face was a careful mask. Brandon looked at the floor. But I've also made peace with who I am. I stood straighter. And who I am is someone who deserves to be chosen. Not as a backup plan. Not as an afterthought. Chosen first. Chosen completely. I looked at all three of them. The parents I'd spent my childhood trying to please. The brother whose comfort always mattered more than my pain. The family I'd shrunk myself trying to fit into. You didn't choose me. They did. I gestured to the Millers. And I choose them. The room was absolutely silent. 200 guests watched this moment unfold, and not one person moved. Susan opened her mouth to speak. I didn't let her. I'm not erasing you from my history. I'm just not giving you a place in my future. And that's not revenge. That's just the natural consequence of the choices you made. I nodded to security. Goodbye. As they were escorted out, the guests began to applaud. Not for the drama, for me, for choosing myself, for standing my ground, for building a family that chose me back. The rest of the wedding was perfect. We danced until our feet hurt. We laughed until our faces ached. We cut the cake while everyone cheered. David spun me around the dance floor until I was dizzy with joy and love and belonging. For those few hours, I let myself forget about the confrontation and just be completely, utterly happy. But the next morning, my phone exploded with messages. Texts from distant relatives I hadn't heard from in years. Messages from family friends I barely remembered. The extended Harper family had heard about what happened at the wedding, and they had opinions to share. How could you embarrass your mother like that? Family is family, no matter what happens. You've broken your father's heart. What you did was cruel and unnecessary. I deleted them all without responding. But then came a message from someone unexpected. My Aunt Margaret, my father's oldest sister. Jessica, I heard what happened at your wedding. I want you to know I'm proud of you. You deserved so much better than how they treated you. I stared at the screen, stunned. I always knew Susan favored Brandon. Margaret continued. I tried to say something years ago, and your mother didn't speak to me for 2 years. But you deserved better. You always did. My eyes burned with tears. I typed back, thank you. That means more than you know. On Facebook, Susan posted a long, dramatic status about ungrateful children and modern society's lack of respect for family bonds and traditional values. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. That evening, I blocked every phone number and social media account connected to the Harper family. Not out of anger or spite, out of peace. David found me on the balcony of our honeymoon suite overlooking the ocean. You okay? I looked out at the waves rolling endlessly toward shore, catching the last light of sunset. Yeah, I leaned into him. I really am. For the first time in my entire life, I wasn't carrying the weight of people who refused to carry me back. I was finally completely free. 3 weeks after the wedding, a handwritten letter arrived at our new address. The return address said, Brandon Harper. My brother's handwriting, messy but distinctive, exactly like I remembered from birthday cards that always felt perfunctory and obligatory. I almost threw it away unopened, but something made me sit down at the kitchen table and read it. Dear Jess, I don't know if you'll even read this. Honestly, wouldn't blame you if you didn't, but I had to try. Mom told me what happened at your wedding. She's a wreck. Dad hasn't been himself since he saw you. I think seeing you that happy without us broke something in him that can't be fixed. I know we haven't always had the best relationship, but you have to understand. Mom and Dad were just trying to keep the peace. I never meant for you to feel excluded. You always made everything so complicated, always bringing up old problems and asking uncomfortable questions. I hope someday you'll understand that family is messy and complicated. Maybe when you have your own kids, you'll see why Mom and Dad made the choices they made. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that we still love you, even if you've decided we're not good enough for you anymore. Your brother, Brandon. I read it twice. Then I folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. David came home to find me sitting at the kitchen table, staring out the window. Letter from Brandon? Yes. What did he say? Nothing new. I stood up and started preparing dinner. He still doesn't understand. He never will. Does that bother you? I thought about it. Really thought about it. No, I said finally. It's not my job to make him understand. It never was. 7 years after I sat alone in Harbor House restaurant, I sat at the head of a very different table. The Miller house was beautiful chaos, the best kind. My daughter Emma, now 18 months old, was being passed from lap to lap like a precious treasure. William was making her giggle with silly faces. Patricia was showing her pictures in a children's book. Michelle's teenagers, now in college, were arguing about something in the kitchen. David was helping Tom with something on the grill outside. It was Sunday brunch, like always, loud and warm and full of love. "All right, everyone," Patricia called out. "Before we eat, we need a toast." She raised her glass and looked at me. "Jessica, would you do the honors?" I stood, Emma balanced on my hip, and looked around the table at the family I'd found, the family that had found me. 7 years ago today, I said, I was sitting alone in a restaurant on Christmas Eve, wondering if I would ever truly belong anywhere. I thought I was broken. I thought there was something fundamentally wrong with me that made me unlovable. I paused, feeling David's hand rest on my back. Then a stranger named Patricia Miller came up to my table and said nobody should eat alone on Christmas Eve. And everything changed. William wiped his eyes. Patricia was already crying. "So here's my toast." I raised my glass higher. "To family. Not the one we're born into, but the one we build, the one we choose, the one that chooses us back every single day." "To family," everyone echoed. Glasses clinked together. Emma clapped her tiny hands, and I looked around at these people, my people, and felt what I'd spent my whole childhood chasing. I belonged, completely, unconditionally. For the first time in my life, I was truly home. Later that evening, David and I sat on the back porch, with Emma asleep between us in her carrier. The November air was cold, but we were wrapped in blankets, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. "Do you ever think about them?" David asked quietly. "Your biological family?" I considered the question honestly. Sometimes, usually late at night. I'll wonder how they're doing, if they've changed at all, if they ever really understood what they lost. "Do you think they understand?" I shook my head slowly. People rarely change in the ways that actually matter, not unless they want to. "Does that make you sad?" I looked at Emma, her tiny fingers curled into fists, her perfect, peaceful face, her chest rising and falling with each breath. "It used to," I said. "I spent so many years being sad about a family that didn't want me. But I don't have room for that sadness anymore. My life is too full now." "What changed?" Marcus wrapped his arm around me. I did. I leaned into his warmth. I stopped waiting for them to love me the way I needed. I stopped making myself smaller to fit into their idea of who I should be. I stopped apologizing for existing. And I started building something new, something real. Through the window, I could see the Miller family, my family, cleaning up after brunch, laughing and talking and moving around each other with the ease of people who truly belong together. "Setting boundaries isn't revenge," I said softly. "It's survival. It's choosing yourself when no one else will. It's understanding that you deserve better and having the courage to walk toward it." David kissed my forehead. "I'm glad you survived. I'm glad you found us." "Me too," I whispered. Emma stirred, making soft baby sounds. I picked her up and held her close, breathing in that sweet baby smell. "I'll never make you earn my love," I whispered to her. "I promise you'll never have to wonder if you're wanted. You'll always know. You'll always belong." She yawned and snuggled deeper into my arms. If you're reading this and you've been the scapegoat of your family, if you've been told you're too difficult, too sensitive, too dramatic, just because you dared to ask to be treated fairly, if you've been made to feel like you're the problem, when really you're just asking for basic respect and love, I want you to know something important. It's not you. It never was. You deserve to be chosen, not as a backup, not as an afterthought, not as the acceptable sacrifice when someone else's needs are deemed more important. Chosen first, chosen completely, chosen without conditions or reservations. Family isn't always blood. Family isn't obligation. Family isn't people who share your DNA but treat you like a burden to be managed. Family is the people who show up, The people who see you sitting alone and invite you to join them. The people who open their homes and their hearts and their legal documents to make you officially, permanently, undeniably theirs. I spent 26 years trying to earn love from people who were never going to give it freely. And then I spent 7 years learning what love actually looks like, feels like, means. Not from the family I was born into, but from the family that chose me deliberately and completely. If the people who are supposed to love you can't do that, if they've proven over and over again that you'll always come last, you have the right to walk away. You have the right to build your own family. You have the right to choose people who choose you back. You have the right to be happy. That's not revenge. That's not being dramatic or difficult or ungrateful. That's just living your life without people who don't deserve a place in it. I found my people. I found my home. And I hope with everything in me that you find yours too. You deserve it. You deserve to be chosen. Thank you for reading my story. I hope it helps someone out there who needs to hear that it's okay to choose yourself. It's okay to build a family that actually loves you. It's okay to walk away from people who can't or won't give you the love you deserve. Remember, you are not the problem. You never were. Until next time, remember,